our team is very willing to follow up with individuals who have questions. I've been happy to meet with people separately, one-on-one, or a group of parents from a school. So if any information in this webinar is something that you would like some follow-up conversation about, just please keep that in mind to reach out and schedule some time if you would like, for example, at your individual school to have some more insight. We also will be providing opportunities for individuals to join committees relative to the work that we are doing in district. So I will go ahead and introduce many of my panelists. Again, panelists are those that have material or information to present to you this evening, and they will be screen sharing, or I will be screen sharing as is the custom. And if you have any questions, there's a couple of ways to put questions so that everybody has access to sharing their questions. You can raise your hand in the webinar, and then at the designated period where you would be wanting to ask questions, we would invite you to do so. We'll have time to allow you to talk. And again, I really thank you. Taking the time out of your busy day to support teaching and learning in East Haven is commendable, and it really shows your dedication to our community and to our students. So I will say thank you for that. And without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and share my screen and begin presenting information regarding this evening's content. So our agenda this evening includes updates on vision of the graduate work, information about a graduation timeline with updates on the 6-12 student success plan, and then our K-5 curriculum and report card revision updates. So we're going to provide some information about the K-2 science curriculum adoption and the initiative to improve report cards for all. And finally, Dr. Marangel is here to present information with regard to a proposal for recommendation, a proposal for a textbook that he would like to implement. And again, just the norms for our curriculum advisory committee. Again, our faculty and committee panelists will present information to attendees. The purpose of this meeting is to provide more time than we traditionally have during the assistant superintendent's report at the board meeting to make sure that folks have an opportunity to also ask questions. Participants will be muted during the panel discussion, but we can use the hand raise feature to indicate if you wish to speak or ask questions. We do ask that if you do have a question, that we focus our questions this evening on items in the agenda. In the interest of time, those that want to have information regarding those items that are on the agenda tonight, we would like them to be able to have that time. If you have additional questions, the end of the meeting is a great time to discuss proposed agenda items for future meetings. What are you curious about? What are you wondering about that your children are taking home or studying? Or what have you heard about in the news and you're wondering how our district is responding? All of those things are great ideas, and we invite your input onto the development of material. I would ask, though, that items of interest that are not on the agenda can be added to the next meeting, but they would have to be within the purview of the Curriculum Advisory Council. So that is anything with regard to curriculum, instructional methods, and assessment in East Haven that we are currently budgeted for, or proposed budgets include for the following year. Programming that does not currently exist in district may require board action prior to our ability to discuss that here. So just so you're aware, I would invite anybody, do you have any questions about our norms for collaboration with our meeting? I would invite you at this time, for those of you that have had an opportunity, do you have a question about the purpose and function of the Curriculum Advisory Council or adhering to the norms for this evening's discussion? Ms. Venegas, do you have a question?
Hello.
Hi, do you have a question about the norms for collaboration or the purpose of the Curriculum Advisory Council?
Yeah, I wanted to see how we're going to get answers to the questions that were already posed at the first two curriculum district committee meetings that are recorded. I haven't seen any follow-up.
Can you let, which two questions are you referring to? And I can let you know where in the agenda those are, or where in future agendas.
I'm saying that I'm saying that I already attended the first two curriculum district committee meetings and that issues were brought up with questions, but no answers were provided.
Okay, thank you.
So
So as discussed, we do have a the structure of the council is we propose items for agendas, and then we prepare that agenda. So a couple, I'm not sure, I tried to ask specifically which issues Ms. Venegas was referring to. Today's agenda items were proposed at the last two meetings. And again,
we're leaving issues on the table that we already brought up at the first meeting, the second meeting, and now this is the third meeting.
Okay, so again, just to remind the folks, our meeting is designed to promote transparency. We include items on the agenda. Our agenda is limited to 4 or 5 items an evening in the interest of time. Extensive discussion around those to enable for discussion around those items. So we do have to prioritize. We have to make sure individuals who are prepared to speak to concerns are made available and can attend at those meetings. So thank you for your question. Again, we want to really increase transparency. This body did not exist previously, so we want to make sure we have time to discuss all of those things. So it is important to just review that our purpose of this group is to review documentation of curricular resources, in some cases, perhaps examine data relative to student achievement, look at the status of curriculum review projects, any items that have been proposed for the agenda discussion that are not aligned with the purpose and functions of this council may be addressed in other committees or councils in district. And so I'm happy to direct those if you would like to share your specific questions with regard to that. So again, for those of you that are new to the council, our curriculum revision process includes a collaborative cycle where teachers are involved to write and revise clear documents, help use standards to meet student needs. We collect information and work to align them to standards. We make sure we're defining them as a district, and then we assess the performance by looking at how students are performing with regard to those actions. So as you listen today to some of those curricular initiatives, I'd like you to keep in mind that what we're doing as a district sort of always follows this cycle where we're proposing changes, making changes, and measuring the efficacy of those changes to make sure that we're good stewards of the resources that we have. Okay, so again, for those of you that are new to the council, curriculum and instruction updates, we do encourage families to sign up for updates from the district using the Remind app. If you would like to text EHPS Learn to 81010, you can certainly get your updates from Remind. And at this point, I would like to turn over the floor to Lisa Velius, who is going to present some information with regard to the vision of the graduate, which was one of the proposed agenda items for this particular meeting.
Thank you, Jen. So I'm going to give a little bit of an update on the vision of the graduate committee that has been meeting each month for the last 3 months to pick up our work from last year. And I'm going to talk a little bit about what the process was for Vision of the Graduate. Our process began in the spring of 2019 when a small group from central office and the high school went to a 2-day workshop to learn about the process of creating a district vision of the graduate, hosted by the New England Association of Schools and Colleges. We are currently in our accreditation year and finalizing a NEASC report. And one of the new requirements in the new set of standards is that districts have a vision of the graduate. So we convened a panel at that time to talk about what we wanted that to look like. And this group we got some education ourselves on creating our vision of the graduate and brought that back to district, after which Erica Forty, our superintendent, and a couple of other key individuals created a process to collect information from educators, parents, students, business leaders in the community, community members like at the Chamber of Commerce and the Rotary, and meetings were held all around town and at the various schools to collect information about what our community believes our graduates should, the qualities that they should embody by the time they graduate from East Haven Public Schools. And it was a very interesting process. It was a very dynamic process to have teachers and other staff members and community members talking about what they would want to see when a student walks across the stage at graduation. What are the transferable skills, the key knowledge, the attributes that they want our children to be able to demonstrate by the time they leave our schools. So I'm going to share in a little bit, one of our slides is going to show you a little bit about what that produced. Our progress up to this point is that we are now taking all of that information that we gathered. We've put together a core team to take that information and expand it out to the next steps in the process. And our plan is to roll out a preliminary version or a preliminary draft of our vision of the graduate hopefully by the end of this school year, possibly early in the fall, depending on how many times we're able to meet before the end of this year.
Thank you. Would you like me to progress the slides?
Thank you. Yes. So why a vision of the graduate? The idea of the vision of the graduate is to give every person in East Haven that is sending a child to school or teaching a child in our schools or working with a child in our schools a North Star, a collective vision for what it is we want our students to be able to do and what qualities we want them to embody. And this isn't just high schools setting graduation requirements in isolation, but rather taking that vision of what we want our graduates to look like and backwards designing that all the way to kindergarten. What do students need to begin to learn and practice at the earliest stages of their education so that by the time they are graduating, they've really had a great deal of time and practice at building these skills. If you can, yep. So these are the 4 phases to develop the vision of the graduate. And I've just talked about the plan and activate. We did plan the engagement process and met with those stakeholder groups in the community. We have activated a design team of school community members. And then once our school community has a draft, we will also include other community members in providing feedback and helping us determine the skills and the measures that we'll use to evaluate our vision of the graduate. From that point, once we've decided on what our key attributes are going to be and what skills we want to address in our vision, we will create a visual. And many schools do this in different ways. Sometimes it looks like it's a graphic or there's some kind of central image that defines our vision of the graduate, and then a narrative that tells the story of that image and how it all feeds into our overall plan, from the large scale visions down to the classroom applications and the ancillary services that we try to provide for students. And then once our community is all in agreement, we will adopt our plan and create a plan for implementation. So this word cloud represents the feedback that we got from the community, our teaching staff at all levels, all departments at the high school, the Rotary and the Chamber of Commerce meetings, all of those qualities and skills and essential knowledge and understandings were taken and they were fed into this word cloud. The words that are largest on the word cloud are the ones that came up most often in those feedback sessions. And this was the central information that we have used as our jumping off point in creating our key attributes for our vision of the graduate. And this is definitely very drafty what I'm sharing with you now, but we had our second full team meeting last week. And at that time, we have taken those the qualities that are listed and the knowledge that's listed on that word cloud. And we've tried to come up with attributes that we believe our graduate needs to have. And generally you try to find larger categories and identify the sub skills in those categories or in those attributes that you would want to measure. So what we are working with right now is the idea that we want the East Haven High School graduate to be a creative problem solver, to be a disciplined or informed thinker, to be a responsible citizen, to be an effective or powerful communicator, and to be a goal-oriented and resilient individual. And the phrasing of these attributes may not be final, but this is what we're working with right now. And under each of these attributes, we have identified a whole list of skills and a whole list of qualities that go along with those skills. So for example, under effective or powerful communicator, we may have skills like the ability to advocate for themselves with a teacher, or the ability to compose an email asking a question of someone when they need something at school, or when they're trying to apply for a job. The ability to speak and give a presentation in alignment with a whole series of our Connecticut core standards for speaking and listening. The ability to participate as an active, engaged learner in a group project where they have to communicate with their peers effectively and share knowledge, and then share that information with a class. So each of these attributes may encompass a wide variety of skills, associated skills. So that's what we're continuing to work on. And our next steps will be to finalize the skill lists and send that out for some feedback.
At this time, I'd like to open up to questions for those who would like to hear from Lisa with regard to her presentation on the vision of the graduate. And I thought it would be appropriate to leave up this slide. If you have a question about the vision of the graduate presentation that Lisa just shared, you can either, I think the Q&A may be working if you would prefer. But again, please remember to keep your questions focused on the content that you've just learned about, and we're going to share airtime to make sure everyone has a chance to comment. Okay, it looks like Ms. Venegas has a question.
Jen, I can't see the Q&A, I don't think.
I can't either, but I
did try to put it back on. I think the meeting would have to be restarted in order for it to happen. So
we're going to focus. We'll use the talking feature for you to share your questions. Thank you. Ms. Venegas, you may unmute if you'd like to speak.
Yeah, thanks. So it's almost already been a year, because now we're entering almost spring. March is next month. And I think the timeline for this is taking a little bit too long, considering
Do
these
you have a question, Ms. Venegas?
Yeah,
do you have a
wait for the
question?
comma, honey. I'm speaking. Are you ready? I want to know, based on that, we have requested this as parents for over 2 years. I want to know how this is going to impact our graduation rate that we have currently.
Thank
How the
you.
vision of the graduate is going to affect the graduation rate?
Yes. Do you have an answer to that question, Ms. Velius?
I don't know that we could predict how the vision of the graduate is going to affect the graduation rate. I think the idea of the vision of the graduate is to work as a unified district at all levels to create more horizontal and vertical alignment in decision-making and resource allocation and curriculum alignment to make sure that we are all working towards the same attributes in our students. So I think we're much too early in the process to try to speculate about what impact that would have on the graduation rate. But I certainly think that there was a great deal of discussion about not just academics in terms of planning for students, but also some of the soft skills and transferable skills that students need to learn and practice in order to be successful beyond school.
Thank you. I see your hand is still up. Do you have a follow-up question, Ms. Venegas?
I believe
Did I
that
answer your question?
I believe that it's good to have adjectives on where you want to go, but it has to be the programming and the staffing skills. And we should already have that information to accelerate this.
Thank you. And again, just if we could focus our conversations with questions, but I would redirect to Elisa's one of her first slides about the process and how that would then inform each of these attributes would be defined with measurable indicators that would inform our program, any program revisions that we'd be making. Is that correct, Lisa?
Yes, I think what Ms. Venegas is talking about is going to happen more when we get to the adopt phase. And we're not at that scope of work yet for this piece. I think we are finding that many of the things that we already do are fitting into our vision of the graduate and key aspects of our vision of the graduate, but we're hoping that this is going to provide everyone with a common vocabulary and clear definitions for what we mean when we say effective communicator or responsible citizen. So instead of everyone interpreting that kind of independently, we will have a clear district-wide vision for what that looks like.
And just to clarify again, Lisa, this does not mean we are absent of criteria, correct? We've been using an academic expectation rubric. Generally, the NEASC process, the accreditation process, is like about every 10 years. So it's not that this is replacing an existing sort of set of criteria that's currently in place. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay.
This is just more to streamline our language and our approach to this, so that rather than each level of schooling, elementary and middle and high school, all kind of creating their own set of criteria and using that to measure success in their schools, and there will still be some of that where schools set criteria for their schools or their levels or their grades, but that we are all on the same page about every level having a responsibility to teach certain aspects of communications, so that when students get to our middle school level, we know they will all have come out of the elementary schools with certain experiences relative to those skills and attributes.
Thank you. I appreciate your presentation. And I do have Ms. Gori up here, who would also, to piggyback on that, talk about the existing graduation timeline and student success plan that's in place for existing students. And I believe I've made you a panelist. Ms. Goriab, are you here?
Yep. Thank you, Jen. Here I am. Thank you so much. So right now, I have a newly created position as the Student Success Planning Team Leader, and I'm working with guidance and various support staff members through from 6th grade through 12th grade at the Academy, JMMS, and East Haven High School. And I put here like a little overview of the work that we've been doing. We're really focusing on creating curriculum that is, like Lisa had said, vertically and horizontally combined and aligned. And so in September through January at JMMS and East Haven Academy, we collaborated to identify needs and curriculum topics. We're trying to make to assure that all of our students are getting the same curriculum at the two schools. JMMS right now, this first year is teaching 45-day cycles where they're doing all kinds of executive functioning and career planning and success planning sort of units. And right now, East Haven High School is also working to create units that align to what JMMS is doing. Right now, we're in the process of really sort of identifying overarching units by grade level. And we are in the process of sort of building on those units backwards, like we had talked about with the vision of the graduate. And we're making really good progress. We have some units identified. Of course, you know, curriculum is a lot of work and it's time consuming. So we're really hoping to have a draft done by the end of the year. Something that we can kind of use as a jump off point for next year and hopefully reflect upon and grow through.
And just to clarify for those families that are new to sort of this council and the process, East Haven Public Schools has a 3-year revision process. So when we say we want to draft, we try to take every 3 years a look at what the data is saying about the students' experience with the curriculum, and we plan revisions based on needs. So that if we want a draft of curriculum, I just want to clarify that does not mean we do not have a current student success plan in place, but we look at things like the completion, college application processes, student graduation rates and retention factors, and financial aid nights and attendance. The student success plan is a developmental guidance curriculum that helps students explore their career trajectory, their aptitudes and interests, and post-secondary initiatives. So I just want to make that clear. Like all other subjects, we look at, in a 3-year revision cycle, we revise curriculum based on reflecting on how students' needs have changed over the past couple of years. Because if curriculum isn't stagnant, it's not something that we just stop and say, we're done now. Because as you know, every year standards change, job, projections of the kinds of careers that are going to be available for students change. So we have to continuously revise to be responsive to those changes. So I just wanted to, if it's okay with you, Juliet, create some clarifying.
No, absolutely. Thank you.
Yeah.
And I also want to point out that that is my second bullet point. So we've been gathering all of the materials that we already have, and we're just growing them and reorganizing them. I think especially at the high school, and it's a really sort of positive thing to be able to think about what our students need at this moment by grade level. So of course, we have those things. The current student success plan is on the East Haven High School website right now. We're just really making to expand it, organize it, make it super attainable, and make it very much more aligned with student needs. So
thank you.
Thank you for clarifying that, Jen.
Are there any questions at this time about the developmental guidance curriculum and student success plan? Okay, so it looks like our next item on the agenda is I have invited here, I have Taylor Auger, who can answer questions if you have technology questions And Julie Church and I will I'll speak to the status of the report card revision updates. At our last curriculum advisory council, we asked for volunteers to participate. I did receive 2 names of people who want to officially be a member of the report card revision team for elementary school. We're welcoming faculty members, we're welcoming parents, grandparents of students in our schools. And so if that's something that means something to you, I would welcome you to join us. We will be hosting the committee meetings and working to host parent focus groups. So at those groups, we can have more extensive conversations with regard to the questions that people want about what they want their child to have on their report card. And we'll be preparing after those focus groups some first drafts to bring to council for to departments rather. So the different departments such as technology, art, unified arts, and so on and so forth. We would then again get the feedback, make those revisions. The curriculum advisory report card committee, which is a subcommittee of this council, would meet separately, have longer conversations about those drafts and be able to present a final draft for feedback. We're hoping that those final drafts can be brought to this committee at our June meeting because there are implications to make sure all of our technology will work to print and store and gradebook share so that we have the summer to make sure that all of that reporting is efficiently input into the system. So we had our first meeting of an in-district committee where we really fleshed out the needs in terms of making sure this will be ready to turnkey for the fall of 2021. And just so you're aware, some of the focus group questions that were drafted, we're looking to understand better the partnership between students and families. What are they able to do in order to understand the current levels of instruction, whether it's what students need to know, understand, and do, or what their individual student has demonstrated. And we are looking for families to share with us what they would need to better understand their child's progress. We'd also like information that they feel is missing from the current report cards. We've talked about the different ways we could record, for example, performance levels in math and problem solving or reading levels. Some families find it easier to read that it's at, below, or above, and some families prefer to see the actual reading level. And so at this time, teachers provide that data as needed at conferences while discussing at, above, or below in the report card. But it's not always a consensus across when we speak with families about what's meaningful for them. I do have a number of families, I believe there's a couple people who were at our last council who are teachers in other districts who had some insight. So I would welcome your insight today if you would like to speak to this or add any questions for discussion for our focus groups. But again, what the purpose for revising the report card, we do have a standards-based report card, and it was adopted, I want to say, in about 2014 or 2015. At the time, since then, there have been new standards adopted in social studies and science, K-12 science and K-12 social studies, but obviously the upper grade report cards and grading system is reflective of those. Our ISTE standards, our National Core Art Standards, and Health and PE. And we find that partnership is so important that we want to make sure there's improved clarity with regard to the things that parents want to know. And I think that is the slide. So are there any questions from our esteemed attendees, or would you like to add any suggested questions to bring to focus groups? Those are the 2 pieces of feedback that I would be looking for. Hey, Ms. Venegas.
Hi, at the very last meeting, we discussed the report cards already and we gave ideas. And one critical idea is to make sure that we include reading levels at the elementary schools. And it's really important that we include those reading levels. Following the meeting, what happened in my child's school is that they did 2 reading assessments within 1 month because they realized that, hey.
So I want to just remind folks, we're not going to speak specifically about
Jennifer,
school
I didn't
issues.
even finish.
I'm sorry, Ms. Venegas. Thank you. I understand. It's not appropriate to bring up individual classrooms and schools.
You're not being.
Just to remind you, Ms. Venegas, of the norms, I would appreciate we're focused on those curriculum revisions. I will invite you to speak again. We have discussed the report card reporting of district level assessments. And if you have a concern about the assessment calendar, we can discuss that at length with in more detail personally. But in this forum, I want to make sure that we restrict our conversation to that. So, so I'll invite you to talk again in a moment, but I'll ask Unileen, is that how you say your name?
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Okay, good. Yes, I do just have one question. This is my first time in this, and I was just wondering if the East Haven school district is kind of trying to follow up or get some data from other near towns in Connecticut that are doing good, like the, I don't know, maybe Guilford or Brownford, that their school districts are doing really good in there with the students. I was wondering if East Haven is trying not to copy, but at least to bring in some of those ideas that are working over there in those towns.
That's a great question. And yes, we do have a number of opportunities where our participants, for example, we participate in group and collaborations, professional developments and trainings, such as regional councils. So our administration or teachers attend those trainings and collaborate where we kind of get ideas on the table. Another example is during our report card revision, Taylor and I met the other day and we provided some examples of other towns and other districts that are have visually pleasing report cards that families, perhaps whether they're cousins or teachers, or that they're aware of. So we invite those that are members of that committee to bring those images to us for review. So we frequently, Connecticut is wonderful in that we enjoy many networks in the state. I know Julie Church speaks to her district facilitator network at length about community engagement strategies. And I really appreciate a lot of those things that we bring from other districts. It's a great question. Thank you so much for bringing that up. And I have one more hand, Ms. Venegas. Again, I'd ask you to refrain from talking about school-specific issues, but you can certainly speak to about any added questions for report card revision.
Jennifer, it's really unacceptable and unprofessional what you're doing with this meeting. I really don't like this at all. It's really discriminatory that you limit the way that I speak. It's unacceptable.
Thank you. Again, at the beginning of the meeting, we do set our norms to refrain to make sure we don't have a lot of time. And I'm happy to have questions and answers and allow multiple opportunities for individuals to speak. But I want to make sure if there's a building-based concern that we address that at the appropriate forum. So thank you so much for that feedback. I would invite the next presenter, Joe Marangel, who is here and is ready to prepare to present. Joe, are you ready?
Yes, thank you. So I believe it was back in December, I shared some of our thinking behind adopting a new textbook for 8th grade social studies course. And I just wanted to give an update for that and provide a little bit of a preview of the resource that we found to be the most effective based on the ones that were under review. So last time I shared this slide, which was an example of the textbook that we're currently using in 8th grade, which is pretty outdated at this point. We purchased it in 2010 and we have been updating the materials as they've needed to be replaced through the years. But since the original purchase, we've since undergone a revision of our content standards, and our entire curriculum really has been revamped to incorporate more of an inquiry-based approach since this book was purchased as well. It's a very traditional textbook. The resources are mostly print-based. There are some digital resources available, but it's not really current with the changes that we've seen in education over the past few years. So given that, we had a couple of outcomes in looking for a new textbook, one being that students would be able to use the resources from a new program to support their inquiry-based learning in each unit. And I emphasized in the last presentation how the textbook itself isn't our curriculum. So we use it more of as a supplemental resource that will enhance the curriculum that we do teach. But it's obviously important to have quite high quality materials, because when students have good sources and activities that help illuminate the topics in our curriculum, the level of understanding obviously becomes deeper. And then our longer term outcome is that students' academic performance will improve with the use of more hands-on and differentiated resources. So if you go to the next slide, so these are the three products that we reviewed. The first one was McGraw-Hill, A History of the United States. And that's a pretty typical textbook, very similar to the one that we actually just had, with the exception of the fact that most of the resources are available online and are very differentiated for different reading levels. And that was a definite plus to that. But in terms of its structure and its organization, it was very topics-based and similar to the format of the book that we are looking to replace. Similarly, the Cengage textbook is more of a traditional textbook, although they do have a lot of ancillary resources that come from National Geographic and Britannica Learning, which is nice since those are pretty high quality online resources. But in terms of the structure, was not really getting toward the inquiry-based format of our units that we have been revising our curriculum to reflect. The TCI version of the U.S. history text, though, was very high quality, and that one was definitely the strongest of the three that we looked at. And I just want to share some of the ways that they approached their entire organization of the program and some of the resources that are available to teachers and students through it. We're actually using this program at the high school with our civics course currently. And the teachers have had very positive feedback about it there. And we're using it in our civics course that students take junior year, as well as our sheltered civics course that our ESL students might take freshman, sophomore, junior, or senior year. And both groups of teachers have had very positive feedback about the resources from their experience with it. And reviewing the middle school versions of the resources, they were completely comparable to the high school versions of the text. So TCI, which is the publisher, has a very hands-on approach to their programs, and the way that they structure all of their lessons throughout the program is using the cycle that I have depicted on the right hand of the slide here. So always students have an opportunity to preview the topic or concept before they study it. And so there's usually an activity that allows them to make a connection in writing or have some sort of discussion with their classmates that helps them to kind of get a general understanding of what they'll be learning about. Then that's followed by some sort of hands-on activity that incorporates engaging content. The activities are all literacy based, so they incorporate different types of text, both fiction and nonfiction, which is nice. There's a very big focus on improving students' reading and writing skills through the design of the lessons. And all the lessons culminate in some sort of processing activity or assessment that students do to apply what they learned. The ultimate goal of the program, though, is active citizenship. And so that's a theme throughout all of the lessons and all the activities. So this is a view of the teacher screen. So this is a view of the teacher screen on the TCI website that just shows you some of the resources that are available on the instructional end in terms of planning lessons to use with these resources. I've looked at a lot of resources in the past, and I've never seen a program that has had so much available to teachers to use in planning. And this is just a small preview of what's on there. What I did was took a screenshot of one particular topic that's addressed in the text, and it's political developments in the early republic. And so what you'll see on the screen is that teachers are given a lesson guide that does not include a scripted lesson, but it includes different paths that a teacher might consider when they're planning for a lesson, which is nice because obviously every teacher will have to plan differently based on the needs of the students that they have in class. And then each component of the lesson is broken down into separate sections on the page as well that teachers can push out to students digitally right through this web page here. For every lesson, there are tips for teaching the lesson in a blended learning environment. So if teachers have students in class and at home, like we do in our current instructional configuration, they provide strategies that teachers might use to teach the lesson using that approach. They have options for differentiating instruction. They have enrichment options, and it's all very well organized and completely digital for the teacher's point of view on this. And if you look at the next slide, that one shows an example of what might be in a lesson guide that walks the teacher through what they might consider when they're planning a lesson. So for that same lesson on political developments in the early republic, there's a question that structures that whole part of the text. How did the Federalist and Republican visions for the United States differ? And the whole goal of the lesson is that students will examine different texts, and those would be primary and secondary resources to help develop an answer to that question. So there are multimedia resources embedded. So I put a screenshot on here of a song clip that students listen to and analyze the lyrics from. There are interactive activities that they do to process the readings. So in this case on the left, there's a debate that students do from the perspectives of Thomas Jefferson and Alexander Hamilton after they've read sources written by both of them on what the ideal government might look like. And there are lesson sequences that are available that you'll see in the top right there that a teacher might think about as they're kind of coming up with their individual lesson plan. This screen here shows you the student view. So when they log in, their first view is really of a traditional textbook, but it's very interactive. And again, the features that are available here are a lot stronger than ones that I've looked at with other texts, because if you look at the toolbar with options on the kind of the top of the page over where the word political is, those are all different ways that students can interact with the text. So the first one is one the teacher can use to adjust the reading level of the text so that they can make the text more difficult or less difficult based on the group that they're working with. The second one allows the text to be read aloud. The third one is a Spanish translation. So the student only has to click that button and everything automatically gets translated to Spanish and can be brought back to English. It really in a second. The next three are tools that allow students to star, highlight, or annotate the text. And then finally, there's an option to actually save it in Google Drive. And then the teacher can actually push the text out to students through Google Classroom, because everything that is on the platform is synced with our student information system in PowerSchool. So as soon as a student is rostered in a class in PowerSchool, they're automatically rostered in the History Alive platform, and the two talk to each other every day. For each section, there's a processing activity and an interactive notebook that allows students to interact with the text as they're reading it. So it goes beyond just literal comprehension questions or like typical worksheet types of questions. They're usually questions that get students to make some sort of connection or to put different pieces together to synthesize. And so that's really strong too. And the teacher can see this on their end to see how students are interacting with the text. typically those interactive notebook prompts build up to a bigger assessment that comes later on in the unit. So students might be writing an essay, and you can see on the bottom right, there's a graphic organizer that they might be filling out as they're reading different types of sources and adding evidence to that they can draw on when they write their essay. And then I think the biggest selling point for this program was the level of cultural responsiveness. The text itself is written from multiple perspectives, but really the resources that are provided within it allow students to examine history from a lot of different points of view that aren't typically represented in textbooks that we've seen in the past. And so I gave you some examples of what that might look like. The first one is with the California Gold Rush. So typically, I'm sure we all have an image in our mind of what a gold rush pioneer might look like, right? So History Alive approaches it in a different way. And what they did was they teach the gold rush from 4 different perspectives. So students read sources written by a couple from Missouri, an Irish immigrant, a Chilean immigrant, and an African American. And so using all 4 of those perspectives, they have to determine what the push and pull factors were to California, and then ultimately write an article that captures the motivations of those different groups. In another activity, students are looking at artifacts. So it's a visual analysis type of activity to compare and contrast how different indigenous tribes lived and adapted to their environments. And then they reflect on how the film industry stereotypes indigenous people. So those resources were definitely very high quality, and the focus is on equal representation throughout the span of US history. And they really try to ensure that by having different groups analyze their materials to make sure that they're represented fairly in the resources. And then finally, the whole approach is grounded on 6 learning strategies that are used throughout the entire year that that draw upon multiple intelligences, but also reflect literacy skills that students might need to read, write, or speak. And those are listed there on the right: visual discovery, social status skill builders, experiential exercises, writing for understanding, response groups, and problem solving groups. So overall, I was very impressed with this resource. I know the teachers have really liked the materials that are available. And I think it will definitely match well with the changes that we've been trying to make in our curriculum.
Thank you, Dr. Marangel. Does anyone have any questions for Dr. Marangel with regard to the social studies textbook proposal that he and his team have put together for History Alive? I don't see any hands up. And Joe, is this an entirely online resource, or will you be purchasing? It looks from here that you're purchasing textbooks for classroom use as well. Is that correct?
Yes, that's a good question. So the textbook portion is hard copy as well. So I planned on purchasing class sets of the textbooks and some extras too, in case some students might want to send them out and take them home. But everything is also available online. Some students prefer the hard copies though, and I always like to have the hard copy available in class for student use.
Sure. And I think just parents who are in attendance should be aware that we always want to make it an option for students if they feel that that's something that works better for their brain. So, so I always like to see that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Excellent. And now our final conversation is just a quick update. We are not complete, but at our last meeting, we talked about the resource adoption of a next generation science standard curricular resource. Our committee is convened in January. I believe Claudia Cox, who is one of our panelists, and Martha Jennings, who was unable to make it today. And I do see that we have a kindergarten teacher in attendance. So I would invite your questions with regard to your thoughts, or if you even would like to attend or view any of the recorded sessions where we've been provided information from the vendors. Our first vendor presentation was from Savvis. They have a program called Elevate Science. And our second and third vendor presentations will be from FOSS and Amplify. We will do some surveys and have folks look at the materials in light of our curriculum revision material resource rubric and cultural responsivity. And for those of you that's a statement that means that we're looking that our students and our diverse populations are represented in the material. So if a young person can see that the examples and the materials are appropriate for students from all cultures and celebrate and represent students from all cultures in our materials. So that's one of the components of the process. We do want to make sure that teachers get to see the usability of the materials. So they'll be piloting lessons from their top choices. There is another review that helps the science really help us understand how students are understanding the science in the rubric. So we'll be reviewing the materials for that purpose. And we're hoping to make a final proposal to the council as Dr. Marangel has done today in a similar way at our June meeting, so that we can roll that out and plan summer curriculum institutes and trainings for teachers to adopt new materials. And I appreciate your time this evening. That is the last item on the agenda. I will hold a couple of minutes. Again, these are the programs that we're looking at. Amplify Science. We already host Amplify. Their online platform provides us with information on our reading assessments. Elevate Science is a platform our students are familiar with that they use for math and reading. And FOSS is a program that our students are using in grades 3 through 12. So the benefits of that is that 3 of these highly rated programs already have some people in district who understand how to use the various platforms, which can be helpful from a technology perspective. I would ask, do families or attendees have any questions about the K2 science and curricular revision question? No questions? Okay. And so that's questions. And again, at our last meeting, we sort of put some things on the agenda. And just again, our focus is just things that we can discuss that are within the purview of this group. We have brought up at previous meetings, things like elementary world language program. That conversation would be more of a Board of Education action. We can certainly propose that as a platform, but that would have budgetary implications. So our curriculum is really for existing programs. If we wanted to adopt new programs, we can even have on the agenda maybe towards the end of the year, just kind of an open forum where we have time to talk and discuss. It sounds like from the attendees that there's some individuals who feel that they would benefit from just some more time to talk with each other. So we can have a subcommittee that may involve just some more collaboration and discussion on just ongoing issues in the district. I would welcome that if individuals would be interested in that. Again, it is hard when you have a meeting. I do try to honor everyone's time. I invite a number of our teachers who have been working hard all day, a number of family members who have to jump into the next level of dinner preparations or getting people places. So I try to keep these meetings to under an hour. But at this time, are there any proposals for upcoming meeting agenda items? Things you would like this committee to consider? Okay. I will hopefully, if you would like to let me know if this information was helpful, I'll be sending out a survey because I want to make sure that, you know, we are somewhat limited with an hour-long meeting and a number of agenda items with a webinar format where our panelists are presenting. So I always look to improve for the district and be able to make sure families have voices, but I always welcome any individuals who wish to reach out to me and schedule a time if you have deeper questions, scheduling a phone call, or if you've heard from anyone here that you have questions from, I would welcome their insight. We do have one question, Ms. Venegas.
Where are the recordings of this meeting kept?
They are on the district website on the page labeled District Curriculum Advisory Council, or I think it's Curriculum Advisory Council. They're also in the Google folder that I send to all the registrants via email at the end of the meeting. That's a good question. Thank you. Any other questions? Okay, again, I thank you all for dedicating your time to supporting our students and for those panelists who were able to present something today. I will stop the recording and I will stay in the meeting. And if anybody has any individual questions, I'm happy to answer them.